everyone, welcome back to my channel, Knee Knits. My name is Amy, and here I talk about all things knitting, and today I'm ranking all of the summer yarns that I've knit with. Over the years, I have knit my fair share of what I would consider our summer knits or warm weather knits, and I have them all behind me. I thought it'd be fun to go through each of them in terms of the yarn that I used and share my thoughts on all of the different summer yarns that I've worked with. Now, I don't think there is a true definition for what exactly a summer yarn is, but for my definition and for the sake of this video, I treat any yarn as a summer yarn if it has a fiber that I think would be better suited for hotter and warmer weather. I'm thinking fibers like cotton and linen and silk. Those are all very breathable. They're considered cooling, as opposed to like a 100% wool yarn, which is known for insulating and keeping you warm. Wouldn't necessarily want to knit with that for a summer garment. I'm going to be sharing all of the yarns that I've knit with, and there are a few crochet projects that I'll be sharing as well, talking specifically about the yarn, my experience knitting with it, and also my experience wearing or using the finished piece. I will be ranking each yarn on an S through F scale, which I have used once before on my channel. It was a very well-received video where I ranked all of my petite knit projects that I've knit, so I'll be doing the same with summer yarns. A lot of you guys had requested the same format in a video about yarn, so I thought the category of summer yarns would be a good category for today's video. If you're unfamiliar with the S through F tier scale, the S is at the very top and it means the best, it means superb, it's like top of the line, almost perfect. I would say perfect. And then A through F, you are probably familiar with a traditional grading scale. You know, A is very good, F is at the very bottom, failing, and all of the letters in between. As with any ranking video or a video where I share my thoughts on a specific product, you know, these are all my opinions and my experience is limited to what I have done myself, so you might have a very different opinion than what I'm sharing with you all, but I just want to make it clear that, you know, this is just for fun and just sharing my thoughts and my experiences with you all. The first yarn I'll be talking about is Berroco Pima 100. It is a 100% cotton yarn, which I think is a great way to start the video for summer yarns, as cotton I think is the first fiber that a lot of people think of when they think of warm weather garments. Cotton is very affordable, it's very breathable to wear. A lot of commercial fabrics are made out of cotton, and this is Berroco Pima 100 right here. This is all I have left in my stash. I had knit the Aosta Cami by the Knit Pearl Girl out of Berroco Pima 100 in the color Wisteria. It's a 100% Pima cotton yarn. It is considered a DK weight yarn, and it's sold in 100 gram skeins, and in the 100 gram skein there are 219 yards or 200 meters of yarn. This is a 4-ply yarn, and it comes in a pretty extensive color range, and I find that the finish of this yarn is pretty matte. It kind of has a little bit of a ropey texture, but it is very smooth and soft. Pima cotton is known for its softness. It's not stiff like a lot of other cottons might be, and I had a pretty pleasant experience knitting this camisole out of the Pima 100. The 100% cotton did not cause me too much hand pain. I find that some plant fibers, because they're stiff and inelastic, they can cause some hand pain if you knit with them for extended periods of time. I didn't really find that with this Pima 100. I found it very smooth, and I really enjoyed the stitch definition. This yarn has a very tight twist, and it just creates beautiful crisp stitches in your fabric. As for wearing the finished garment out of Pima 100, I found it pretty comfortable to wear on hot summer days, and I didn't find too many issues with stretching of the fabric, even though it was a 100% cotton. That might be attributed to the fact that the straps were made out of I-cords that you tie, so the ties really helped me have some adjustment within the straps, and they didn't really stretch out too much. Overall, pretty good experience with this yarn. It is a 100% cotton, and you'll find as I discuss some other yarns in this video that 100% cotton is just not my favorite to work with. If I had a choice between something that was 100% cotton or not 100% cotton, I would opt for something not 100% cotton, but for what it is, I think this is a very good yarn if you're looking for a DK weight 100% cotton that's affordable and has a wide range of colors. Berroco Pima 100 is a great selection. For all of those reasons, I would rank Berroco Pima 100 with a B. Next Next up, I'll be talking about Sandnes Garn Lena. And Sandnes Garn Lena is a worsted weight yarn. It's a blend of a few different fibers, including cotton, linen, and viscose. It's 53% cotton, 33% viscose, and 14% linen. It's sold in 50-gram balls, and in this 50-gram ball, you get 110 meters of yarn. It comes in a pretty extensive color range. I don't think it has the most extensive color range, but more than likely you're going to find the color that you want within Lena. It has a 4-ply texture, and you can see here that the different fibers in the yarn take the dye a bit differently from each other, so all of the colors in this yarn line have a little bit of variation within them. This color here is called Putty, which is a light beige color. You can see the yarn has a bit of a loose twist, and it does have some texture throughout the strand of yarn. It's not perfectly smooth due to that loose twist. So I've made 2 garments out of Sandnes Garn Lena. The first was for myself. This is my Anchors summer shirt. It's a pattern by Petite Knit, and I used the color light pink for this one. This I knit on 4mm needles, and then I did also knit the Vegas top by Suzanne Mueller, which I gifted to my sister, so I don't have that with me today, but I used this yarn here in Putty for that tank top. Knitting with Lena was a very pleasant experience, I think more so than I expected. I found that this yarn did have a little bit of elasticity compared to a 100% cotton yarn, which kind of surprised me. It was a very smooth knitting experience despite the very loose twist that is in the yarn, and I really like the fabric that it created while knitting it. I really like how it blocks. It blocks to have really nice stitches. This is one of those fabrics that kind of feels cool to the touch, which if you haven't experienced that before, I think it's a really attractive quality in a fabric for the summer, because you never want to put on something that is already warm before you're even wearing it. And it does have a bit of drape, but keep in mind this is a worsted weight yarn, so the fabric that it knits up is somewhat thick, I think, for a summer garment. I think Lena does show some imperfections in fabric that I otherwise don't experience with other more elastic yarns. For example, you can see in the Vegas top here that I experienced some rowing out along that armhole edge, which I normally don't experience too much rowing out in my other knitwear, and this yarn does sort of exaggerate any sort of gauge imperfections that you might have. You can sort of see in this fabric here that there are spots where some of the stitches are a little bit looser than others. Again, that might be attributed to my own personal knitting. I like wearing my Anchor summer shirt in transitional seasons like the spring and late summer, maybe early fall. For a t-shirt, I do find that this is pretty thick to wear in the heat of summer, especially around the underarms. You know, there's a lot of fabric that would definitely get sweat through pretty quickly on a really hot, humid day. I've had all around positive experiences with Lena, both knitting and wearing it, and I look forward to using it again in future projects. I think it'd be really cool to make some more tank tops and t-shirts out of this yarn. This is definitely my go-to yarn for the summer. Because of that, Lena's gonna get the S ranking in today's video. It's definitely my favorite summer yarn by far. Next up is Lion Brand 24/7 Cotton. 24/7 Cotton is a 100% mercerized cotton yarn. It's a worsted weight, and in the 100-gram ball, you get 186 yards or 170 meters of yarn. If you're unfamiliar with mercerized cotton, it is a chemical process that treats cotton to give it more durability. It gives it more vibrance in the dyeing process, and it gives it more shine. The color line of 24/7 Cotton is a lot of bright colors. There are some neutrals in there, but it is mostly a very bright rainbow assortment. 24/7 Cotton I've used in a wide variety of different accessory projects, one of which here is the Portofino bag. This is a crochet project by Two of Wands, and it's a mesh bag that I use for going to the beach. I also have a knit mesh bag. This is the Pike Place Market bag by Bluebird Pine Shop that I have knit out of 24/7 Cotton, and I've also made a few gifted washcloths, and I've also crocheted the Sandbar Cardi by TL Yarn Crafts as well. I use that as a beach cover-up. So I don't have a yarn ball to show you guys the yarn up close, but you might be able to see it pretty well with this mesh fabric that I have here. You can see how it has a bit of shine, and it is very smooth. It kind of looks kind of ropey up close, and it is really good for crocheting with because there's like no potential for splitting. It is a very strong yarn, and it does have a little bit of a toughness on the exterior of the yarn. yarn. It just feels a little bit stiff, and for that reason, that's why I choose to use it for home accessories and not necessarily garments. It creates great stitch definition, and I find it a little bit better for crocheting with rather than knitting. One of the things I really like about 24/7 cotton is its machine washability, and especially when I'm using this for like a beach tote where it gets really sandy and gets like the salt water all over it. Same with my sandbar cardi that I wear to pools or beaches. I can just chuck those in the washing machine and then the dryer, and they come out good as new. This yarn is very dense, so if you are knitting large projects out of it, please be wary that they will end up being very heavy. My sandbar cardi is the heaviest garment that I've ever made, and it does stretch out over time, but popping it back in the dryer tends to shrink everything back to its original size. So if you're looking for a great durable yarn for summer accessories, go for Lion Brand 24/7 cotton. So I would rank Lion Brand 24/7 cotton as a B. Next up is Knitting for Olive Pure Silk. Knitting for Olive Pure Silk is a 100% silk yarn. It's fingering weight and sold in 50-gram balls, and in the 50 grams you get 250 meters of yarn. It is a very loosely spun yarn, and it has a bit of texture that you can see in the yarn itself, and it's shown pretty well here in the yarn ball. This is my leftover pure silk from a Cumulus tee that I knit in the color Dusty Artichoke. This is a petite knit pattern. And I have also knit my favorite things knitwear camisole number 4 out of pure silk. This is the color Olive. The color range of Knitting for Olive is pretty extensive, not as extensive as Knitting for Olive's Merino and Soft Silk Mohair, but you have a pretty good variety of colors if you're looking for neutrals. Biggest gap I could find with the color selection if you're looking for reds or purples, not the best selection from the Pure Silk line. My overall knitting experience with Pure Silk is okay. It is a fingering weight yarn, so automatically you're working with pretty small needles if you're holding it single, usually around 3 millimeters. I believe I used 3 millimeters for both this tank top and for the Cumulus tee. Now, the Cumulus tee, I feel like I had a lot of difficulty knitting because you have to do a lot of portions flat. I found the Pure Silk to be very tough on my hands by having absolutely no elasticity in the yarn. It was very rough, and I found that purling the way I purl was just not very comfortable with the Pure Silk. Although I don't love purling with Pure Silk, once I got to knitting in the round and stockinette with my Cumulus tee, it was a much better experience. So I think that as long as I have projects in the round with Pure Silk, it might not be that bad. And for some reason I recall struggling a little bit more with the Cumulus tee rather than with this camisole number 4. Maybe it was the broken rib that made things a little bit simpler. Now, as for the finished fabric of the Pure Silk, you can see as I'm waving around this camisole, it is a beautiful, drapey, thin fabric. If you're looking for something super comfortable to wear on like the hottest of summer days, this fabric is definitely it. It is like paper thin, but not see-through at all. Even with this broken rib pattern, I feel like you can barely see through it. I never have issues with feeling like it's a little bit too see-through. It just is super drapey and flowy, and I just really like the fabric it creates. It feels really good on my skin. I wore my Cumulus tee a lot last year because it just feels just like a normal t-shirt. Like, I don't feel the fiber on my skin at all. It feels very breathable. It's good for both hot days and cooler days. It's just all around like a really nice fabric. With both of my garments knit out of Pure Silk, I have experienced some stretching out over time, which usually is expected with a lot of summer yarns. The Cumulus tee that I've knit has since widened since I last cast it off and measured it, and I found a lot of issues with the straps of my camisole number 4. These I-cord straps knit out of the Pure Silk are very stretchy, and I've actually had to go back, cut them, and remove like at least 1.5 inches off of them to tighten them up for the next summer. I don't know if I'll have to do that twice, but I'll keep you posted on my channel if I do. Now, the one major con with the Knitting for Olive Pure Silk fabric is that I find that it looks a little bit like worn in. There is a lot of texture in the finished fabric, and I feel like it looks like it's pilling. I cannot tell you for sure if this is pilling or if it's just texture, but from afar it just kind of looks a little like run down. Like, it looks like I've worn this t-shirt for years when I know I've only had it for about a year. I have noticed significant pilling at the underarms of my Cumulus tee. There have been some points in time where I've had to pick off very large pills from the underarm just from wearing it after one season. So my knitting experience with Pure Silk is just okay. I wish it were better, but the finished fabric that it creates is just, it's too good. It's gonna make me knit with it again in the future. I've only knit with it held single, and I do know a lot of people really love the fabric and knitting experience holding it double as well at a DK weight. So I would like to try that in the future. So I'm gonna rank it in the middle at a C. Lion brand Truboo is a 100% rayon from bamboo yarn. It's a DK weight yarn, and in the 50-gram ball, you get 241 yards or 220 meters of yarn. It's an extremely shiny, smooth, and slippery yarn that comes in an array of pastels and brights and just a few neutral colors. Now, I've crocheted a tank top that was sort of a combination of patterns between the Deco tank by Two of Wands and the Chasing Summer Light tank by Janine Miska. I used the color Mushroom, which is this really cute purple color, and I had a pretty decent crocheting experience with it. Truboo has a lot of different plies in it, and I feel like it has potential to be splitty, and it is super slippery. Although I found that my crocheting experience with it, I didn't really have any problems with splittiness. The finished fabric it created was incredibly drapey, incredibly cool, or maybe even cold to the touch. I did find that the yarn is a little bit shinier in the ball than it is when knit or crocheted up, so maybe keep that in mind if the shininess of the ball is maybe deterring you. It does go away a little bit in the finished product. Now, I was grateful that the patterns that I was using for my tank top were seamed patterns, so I did have some seaming to keep some structure of my garment, which I think without the seaming, this garment would have been stretching and slipping all over the place. So if you are using Truboo, I would make sure you pick a pattern that has some structure to it. Something that's seamless is probably not going to hold its shape. And unfortunately, because of the stretching out, this tank top did not last very long in my closet. It's why I'm only showing you guys photos here. I don't have it with me. I think I ended up donating it. I just did not want to wear it that often, despite it being a pretty fun yarn to work with. It is kind of unique, but I didn't really love it. So I'm gonna rank Truboo with a D. Lion brand Coboo is the sister or cousin to Lion brand Truboo and is similar in that it contains rayon from bamboo, but it also contains cotton. So this is a blend of 51% cotton and 49% rayon. It's a DK weight yarn and comes in a decent variety of colors. It has 232 yards or 212 meters per 100-gram ball. The color range has some brights, some pastels, and a few neutrals. So I knit the Streamline Tank by Two of Wands in Lion brand Coboo in the color white. This is a free pattern online if you're curious. I really like the pattern. But talking about the yarn, now I think that this yarn has everything that Truboo had that I liked, and then it took away all the bad things about Truboo and made it better. So this, because it has cotton, it just feels like it has a lot more structure, but you can see how much drape the finished fabric has. Similar to Truboo, Coboo does have a lot of different plies, and it does have potential to be very splitty. I've read mixed reviews that some people cannot stand this yarn because of how splitty it is, but my knitting experience, I did not experience issues with the splittiness. So, you know, that might be something that differs from crafter to crafter. I find this fabric has some structure from the cotton. It has a very nice smooth feel, and it doesn't really have the shininess that Truboo has. It has incredible stitch definition, and it just creates the most beautiful smooth fabric that is also, similarly to a lot of the other fabrics I've talked about, kind of cool to the touch. It has sort of a brushed feel, and it kept its structure pretty well in this tank top. This is a seamed tank top, so keep that in mind. There are side seams here, and there are some seams at the top of the straps, which I think have helped it keep its shape over time, but I've not really experienced major stretching in any bad way. And I've had this tank top for at least 2 or 3 years by now, and I've worn it every summer. For all those reasons, I do really like this yarn. I think it is really wearable and pretty easy to knit with. I do wish it did come in more colors, so I'm going to rank this yarn at a B. Next is Kelbourne Woolens Mojave. Kelbourne Woolens Mojave is a sport to DK weight yarn. It is 60% cotton and 40% linen. It's sold in 50 gram skeins, and in the 50 grams you get 185 yards or 170 meters. The yarn itself consists of 5 sets of 2-plies, which you can see here. I feel like it reminded me immediately of embroidery thread. This is the color electric blue, which is like super bright. It has a very matte finish and a little bit of like a halo. I don't know if you can see that at all, but the yarn itself has a little bit of like a fuzz that comes off of it. With that yarn, I knit the Poppy Tee by Petite Knit, and this t-shirt I enjoyed knitting. The knitting experience with the Mojave was very good. I didn't have any hand pain. I felt like the yarn does have a little bit of elasticity in it compared to like a 100% cotton, and it is very soft. When working on this project, one of the things I noticed immediately when working with this yarn was how much that it shed. Starting right away with me winding up the yarn into a ball. Once I took my yarn off the ball winder, there were little blue dusty fibers all over my workspace, and I did find that while knitting this, it would leave, you know, a little bit of a electric blue dusty trail like on my clothing or on my work surface, and I think that's from the linen. I think linen is known to shed a bit, and it takes a couple washings for all of that sort of dustiness to go away. I do remember that I knit this t-shirt really quickly. I think that means that I really enjoyed working with the yarn and didn't have any issues with it tiring my hands or my wrists. After blocking, it created a really smooth fabric, really good stitch definition, and it is a little bit of a thicker fabric for what I would consider like a summer knit. I find that I cannot really wear this t-shirt on super hot, humid summer days. It's more of a transitional spring and late summer shirt. A good yarn if you're looking for something thicker for the summer, or if you're looking for something that has a bit of drape but a little bit more structure, and it does have a lot more softness than I would call like a 100% cotton. I think the linen in here really makes this a really nice fiber to touch. Despite enjoying knitting with this yarn and wearing this t-shirt, it's not really my most reached for t-shirt because I find the fabric to be a bit thick and stuffy, so I'm gonna rank the Kelbourne Woolens Mojave with a C. Knitting for Olive Cotton Merino is another pretty popular summer yarn. This is a fingering weight yarn, and it is a blend of 70% cotton and 30% merino. It's sold in 50 gram balls, and in the 50 grams you get 250 meters. Cotton merino is known for having the wearability of cotton, but the merino content in there gives it the knitting qualities that a lot of people want when knitting with cotton, like elasticity and bounce and memory. I knit my favorite things camisole number 5 out of Knitting for Olive Cotton Merino. This is the color Dusty Blue Whale. I really enjoyed knitting with this yarn. It really felt like I was knitting with a merino and not a cotton at all. Because of that, you know, absolutely no hand pain. I could knit on it for a really long time. I really liked how the stitches were coming out, and with blocking, the stitches evened out even more so than they did when they were being knit up. I didn't find that the cotton merino showed any tension or gauge irregularities that I have seen with some other summer fibers in my other projects. I think all of these stitches came out really neat and crisp, and you can see the drape and flow of this fabric. I did hold the yarn single, so this is a fingering weight fabric, which is similarly to the pure silk, very thin, and I find it very wearable on hot summer days. The finished effect of the yarn is kind of matte and brushed. It does sort of have that like cottony feel when you touch it. I think that makes it pretty wearable in the summer. I've worn this on hot days and I've not found it stuffy or overwhelming, and I haven't really experienced too much like stretching out of this tank top yet. I'll be honest, I don't think I've worn it enough to maybe see that it has stretched out a lot. I think that's maybe a good thing, that if I've only worn it a few times and it hasn't stretched, you know, I've had a couple other garments that have stretched after like one wear. So far this is holding its shape pretty well. This is the only project that I've made with Knitting for Olive Cotton Merino, and you can see it is a 2x2 ribbed piece, which I think creates a much different fabric than if I were to knit a stockinette piece out of this. And even with the ribbing, you can see how much drape and flow that this has. So I'm kind of eager to knit another project in a stockinette. I think this would make a really good just like basic t-shirt or another basic tank that you're looking for, you know, the knitting experience of merino, but the wearability of cotton. I think it lives up to the name, and I'm gonna rank Cotton Merino with an A. Sandnes Garn Tynn Lina is the fingering weight version of their worsted weight Lina. It is the same exact fiber content. You get 53% cotton, 33% viscose, and 14% linen in Tynn Lina. With the fingering weight in a 50-gram ball, you get 241 yards, which is equivalent to 220 meters. The one difference between Tynn Lina and Lina is while Lina, the worsted weight, is a 4-ply yarn, Tynn Lina is a 3-ply yarn. It similarly has some color variance within each ball as each of the fibers takes the dye differently. I believe it has the same color line as Lina, a good variety of neutrals, brights, and pastels, and it has a bit of shininess in the ball that I don't think is as prevalent in the Lina, but in the Tynn Lina I feel like you can really see the sheen from the viscose. So I knit the Kutar top by Sari Nordland out of Tynn Lina, and I really enjoyed the knitting process. It was a top-down tank top with all of this lace, and I feel like it had great stitch definition for this lace pattern, and I'm really glad that I chose this yarn for the lace pattern. You can see all of the lace patterning there. It's really nice. I feel like Tynn Lina is similarly like loosely spun, similar to Knitting for Olive Pure Silk. You can see the finished fabric here does have a lot of drape, a lot of flow. I knit this on 3mm needles, so it is a fingering weight fabric, and this has been super comfortable to wear on really hot summer days. The finished fabric of Tynn Lina I think has less sheen than the ball shows, which I think is good. I think most people don't really like their garments to be super shiny. And one of my favorite things about this fabric is how drapey it is. I know I've been saying a lot of the fabrics today are drapey, but I think out of all of them, Tynn Lina on 3mm here has had the most drape, the most flow. You can see it just cascades down wherever you move it. Now I did want to compare this fabric to the Knitting for Olive Pure Silk fabric because the two yarns I find have like a similar kind of finish quality, which is funny because they have completely different fiber contents, but I feel like they both are super wearable. They're very thin and drapey, and they both can be knit at the same gauge. But you can see the difference between the Tynn Lina over here in this hand and the Pure Silk. The Tynn Lina is really molding to my hand. It even is a little bit see-through, just barely, where the Pure Silk, and these are knit on the same needle size, this has a lot more structure. It's a bit more stiff, if I even dare call it stiff. I don't think it's stiff, but it's stiffer than the Tynn Lina. So if you're looking between these two yarns, Pure Silk and Tynn Lina, and you want drape, then Tynn Lina is going to be your best call. If you're looking for a little bit more structure and opacity, then Pure Silk is going to be a better option for you. I think holding these both in my hands, the Tynn Lina feels a little bit cooler to the touch. I could wear the Pure Silk on a fall day, but I feel like the Tynn Lina might be too cooling to wear on like a fall day. It might be like too thin and leave you too cold. So Tynn Lina gets good marks from me all around. Really good knitting experience, really good wearing experience, and I really like the finished fabric, especially if you're looking for something with this much flow and drape. So I'm gonna rank Tynn Lina with an A. Last yarn I'll be talking about is Quince Co Sparrow, which is a 100% linen yarn. Quince Co Sparrow is a fingering weight and sold in 50-gram skeins, and within the 50 grams you get 168 yards or 154 meters of yarn. The 100% linen yarn out of the skein has a bit of stiffness and has a bit of shine. I knit this out of the color Eclipse, which is the black color in the line. I think the color selection from this yarn it's moderate. It doesn't have a ton of colors, but it probably has the color you're looking for if you're looking for like a neutral or a basic everyday color. Now, the Audrey top is knit at a DK weight gauge, so I did hold the fingering weight yarn held double, so that's my only experience with the 100% linen yarn. And at a DK weight gauge, I did not have too much difficulty knitting with this yarn. Linen is notorious for being a very stiff yarn, and a lot of knitters don't like working with 100% linen, or you have to be very cautious that you're not working your hands too hard with linen because of the stiffness. It is an extremely slippery yarn, so I did knit this with my wooden needles. The wooden needles helped with the grip, and it also helped keep everything smooth and give me an even tension in my knitting. So decent knitting experience with the linen yarn held double. Because this is a tank top at a DK weight gauge, it did go by pretty quickly, and I blocked it, and blocking linen yarn means everything. Linen is a fiber that is going to soften immensely with washing. Getting it wet and letting it dry does a lot, as well as like moving around the fabric a lot. Not that it seemed stiff before blocking, but wow, this got all this drapiness that you see here came after washing this like a couple of times. So I have worn this a lot. Last summer I wore it on pretty hot and humid days, and I found this fabric extremely comfortable to wear on super hot and humid days. It was super breathable and cooling, and I really liked it against my skin. It does seem like a heavy fabric in the DK weight gauge, but it did not feel heavy while wearing it, which was awesome. Now I've machine washed this a few times. You know, every time I wore it, I got sweaty, needed to machine wash it, and the machine washing really helped continue to transform this fabric. The color has faded a bit with the washing, so keep that in mind. This is, you know, it's still black, but it's not as deep and black as it was than when I first cast off this tank top. And you can see that the fabric itself has a lot of like, I don't know how to describe it. You can kind of see the color irregularities, or like when you fold it, it kind of keeps the fold lines. I don't really know how to describe it, but you guys know what you're looking at. It's like not completely solid. Now this is stockinette stitch, and I liked knitting with it. I feel like because the linen yarn was so stiff, I could not imagine doing any sort of like patterning with the yarn. I would stick to stockinette with this. So I wouldn't use Quince Co Sparrow in all of my summer knits, but I think with the right project, you can create a really beautiful piece. Because of that, I'd rate Quince Co Sparrow with a B. That's all the summer yarns that I've knit with. I hope you guys enjoyed this ranking and the pros and cons of the knitting and wearability of each of these yarns. Let me know what your favorite summer yarn to knit with and to wear is in the comments. But thanks for joining me today. If you like what you saw, feel free to subscribe. I post knitting videos about once a week here on my channel, and looking forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye.